Welcome to the Outlier Mindset Podcast, your guide for living a life by design. Here, we explore the journey of becoming an outlier, finding your purpose, mastering your mindset, optimizing your health, achieving financial freedom, and building a life centered around your passions. So tune in, transform, and thrive. Welcome to the Outlier Mindset. Let the journey begin. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Outlier Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Robin Schley, and in today's episode, we're joined by Dr. Hiba Khaled, a visionary co-founder of Embers, whose journey from a dedicated NHS physician to a Harvard-educated medical educator and leadership coach is truly inspiring. After overcoming her own struggle with burnout, Hiba has helped guide numerous individuals in high-pressure careers to reclaim their well-being and thrive. Hiba, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Rodman. It's nice to be here.
I'm really excited to have you here today. Our listeners are going to gain so much knowledge from you when it comes to so many different things. There are so many things that you work on that are really, really relevant to that outlier, to that top performer, the person who's out there really working hard in life. So we're going to talk a little bit today we're going to talk about burnout. We're going to talk about accountability. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship. And I know you've got an interesting entrepreneurship journey. You have not been an entrepreneur your entire life. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur for about a year.
So how did you make that transition from not being an entrepreneur? It's a big transition. It's a matter of really discovering yourself and what you want to be doing. But how did you go about making your transition?
Yeah, I love what you just said there, that it's about really getting to know yourself to make the transition. And that's kind of how it happened. So I started my professional career as a physician. So I'm an anesthesiologist by training. I went to med school, did my anesthesia training, and then it was during my residency that I started to burn out. And I remember feeling like I don't want to live my life this way for the next 35 years before I retire. And I remember just different phases of residency where like the burnout was a little bit more intense than other times. And people would just say to me, like, keep going, it'll get better. In a few years, it will get better. But I just felt like I didn't want to wait for a specific number of years before I could really enjoy living my life. And I thought it was such a shame to like spend the next 5 years kind of in misery or I shouldn't say misery. There was a lot of stuff that I had, I felt rewarded by being a doctor. And the job itself was very complex, intriguing, and intellectually stimulating. But I felt like it came at a very expensive cost to my own well-being and my own kind of life work balance. And yeah, so I took a break to go to grad school and take some time off just to kind of recalibrate and give myself a break. I went to Harvard for grad school, and I often used to say that I'm taking a break like at Harvard, which is kind of an oxymoron because it wasn't an easy like time, but it wasn't life or death either. So it did give me the opportunity to reflect and really get to that path of self-discovery, because I had a bit more breathing room to do the thinking that I needed to do and to really reflect on like, what kind of life do I want to have? What kind of impact can I make? What transferable skills do I have? Is medicine the right path for me? Because when I went to Harvard, I had always planned to go back. But when actually it came to graduation, I wasn't ready to go back because I had discovered that I had burnt out for specific reasons, and I understood that part, but I wasn't sure that I was ready to go back into medicine without burning out again. I didn't know if I had the right tools at that point to go back without burning out, and that felt scary to me. And so I took a kind of a transition job where I worked at Harvard for a couple of years, and it was almost like buying myself time, but also gaining a lot of skills and experiences that helped me kind of shape the path to entrepreneurship. And that's kind of how I ended up in entrepreneurship through a series of fortunate events, some life experiences that came my way, and a lot of introspection.
Well, it seems like a lot of people, when they're going through a process like that, it's really hard to pull yourself out of what you're currently doing and be still and to listen to yourself and to do some self-analysis to see what you want to be, what you want to be doing, where you want to be, how you want to be doing it. We get so busy and so inundated. Did you get to a point where like you were just burnt out and you're like, just shut the faucet off, said, I'm burning out, I need to shut this off and try something different? Or was it a little bit more gradual than that?
I think the awareness to burnout was way more gradual, where like I had gone through multiple stages before I realized I'm so tired, I'm so exhausted. Actually, I can't do this anymore. But it didn't happen overnight. It happened over probably 2 years, where it was just kind of like, I know I'm a very joyful and fun-loving person and quite compassionate. And I started to lose some of these attributes day to day, where I would just become really irritable, or things that are really not that big of a deal used to frustrate me like a great deal. And kind of starting to notice these subtle things about like me that I was just like, I'm not a miserable person, or I'm not the kind of person who doesn't care, or I'm not the kind of person who wakes up in the morning and doesn't want to go into work. I take great pride in my work. I felt really connected to my sense of purpose as a doctor, but it just got to the point where I felt like, I think the point that it really hit me was when I was starting to feel this sense of apathy. And I think that's like a kind of down the stream of burnout. Like everyone expects doctors to be stressed. Everyone expects doctors to be tired all the time. We're highly functional under stress as a group. And so all of that was the expectation of the profession. But it was just when the apathy hit, that's when I was like, whoa, that's not right. Like something's got to give. And then I felt kind of disconnected from my sense of purpose near the end of my training. And I did then try to reconnect with my sense of purpose. And that's when I decided to take a break from my residency and go to Uganda and do some volunteer work, because I thought that would help me reconnect with why I started medicine in the first place, just to kind of be away from my current environment and be somewhere where I felt like I was doing something in a different way, using the skills I've now gained as a doctor and as an anesthesiologist, because there was a high need for anesthesiologists in Uganda and other parts of sub-Saharan Africa, where they don't have anesthesiologists in the same way that we do in the UK, where I trained, or the US or Canada. And so that was kind of like me kind of going away from the noise and trying not to be influenced so much by what I was hearing, because I was also under a lot of pressure from my mentors not to leave and not to take a break and not to destroy my career. And so there was like a lot of voices in my head telling me don't take a break, but this gut feeling of like, I can't keep going like this. I need to just pause, and then I need to like think clearly by myself with myself, and not just keep being influenced by all these voices around me. And it was hard. It was really hard, because mentors, especially with mentors, we tend to trust them and we seek their advice, and we look to them for answers, right, when we're confused. And so to get the answers I didn't like hearing, and then to go against their advice, was a really hard thing for me to do. But in Uganda, I really felt I was in rural Uganda. I was in like the Midwest of Uganda, in a rural hospital, in a place that didn't have a lot of people. And there I was quiet enough for me to start hearing that inner voice and to start listening to it too, and then make decisions that felt a bit more aligned with that part of that stage of my life at that time.
So I know sometimes that leap to being an entrepreneur, it's not always easy, because people might not have the right expectations. There could be a lot of hurdles along the way. What was that like for you when you made that transition? Because that's a pretty big leap, going from a doctor over to an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. It's a very scary experience to go from the known to the unknown, and to go from a very certain career path to a very uncertain one. And I think, again, there's a lot of things within me that would have prevented me from taking that leap that I had to renegotiate with. For example, I'm a refugee, or I come from a family of refugees, and that sense of security or insecurity was really high in my family. So for like, one of the most important things that got distilled in me is have a good education and always have money. Like, always make sure that you have a secure career and good education to fall back on in case something happens. So for me to go from a very certain career to a very entrepreneurial and uncertain career, it required me to disappoint my family, and to really hold them through that process of disappointment, and it was scary for me because I also held those beliefs because they were ingrained in me so much in my childhood, that it wasn't until I was on a Mexican beach. I'll just tell you the story because there's kind of a couple of trips that happened that really were meaningful and were pivotal in my life in order to help me make the leap. So I was working remotely, and I was surfing during the day, in the mornings, then having my lunch, and then sitting down and working really effectively for the afternoons and getting a lot done. So I would get actually most of my workload done by like Tuesday afternoon, which is, again, a testament to just working smarter, not harder. And then I would go down to the beach to watch the sunset every night. And that would be kind of my ritual, where I would that would be the end of my workday. I would go down to watch the sunset and watch the waves. And I absolutely love that because I love watching the waves because I'm trying to surf them, or like during the day. And there was one night where I did that. And for an hour and a half, I was just like really present with the sunset, with the waves. And I just felt so much peace within my body. And I just remember feeling like no matter what happens, I will always be okay. And in that moment, or like actually afterwards, like an hour and a half later, I was like, whoa. I was like, is this what meditation is supposed to feel like? Because I felt like I was in a meditative state, and I've been trying to meditate for about a decade because I've read about, and I've known about the the benefits of meditation. But I've tried apps, I've tried guided meditations, and nothing really worked for me. And I just made a promise to myself on that beach, no matter what, before I go back to New York City where I live, I'm going to learn how to meditate because I want to bring this feeling of inner peace back with me to the chaotic city of New York. And through a series of synchronous and fortunate events, I ended up meeting my meditation teacher on my very last day of my trip. After Mexico, I went to Colombia. I met my meditation teacher, and like 5 hours before my flight. And then when I went back to New York, he said to me, like, listen, I can help you learn how to meditate. And he did a 4-week program with me, just via Zoom. And, we started really small in increments. He really helped me understand, like, why am I doing this particular mindfulness exercise versus that one? And how can I bring mindfulness to my everyday, like while I'm making a cup of coffee, while I'm brushing my teeth? So that really helped me really anchor myself in mindfulness. And then from there, I really struggled for about a month to get quiet and sit still because I didn't know how to do that before. And then from there, I started really to see the benefit. I'm like, okay, it started incrementally connecting to that stillness. And then I would go from 2 minutes to 5 minutes, 10 minutes to 30 minutes, and through that process, that's when I started to really hear my inner voice and just really start listening. And then all of the entrepreneurial ideas started coming into my mind. And then from there, it was just the right people started coming by along too. Like my business partner and I have been friends for a decade or more than a decade now, but through we started having the right conversations at the right time. Then we started ideating together. I was still in a job at Harvard. I was still working there. And I thought, okay, maybe in 5 years we'll go and do this. Maybe in 5 years, down the line we'll have this project. But by the end of that year, so that was probably March 2022. By December 2022, I found myself in India. Again, it was an intuitive feeling while in meditation in the summer where I felt like you need to go to India within the next 8 months. And I've been wanting to go to India my whole life. So I didn't know why like 8 months now. But within 5 months, again, through luck or fortune or whatever, I found myself in India. And then when I was in India, I felt all this tension within me where I felt like something's not aligned. I quit medicine. This was a really hard decision for me to do. And I'm now in a job where I don't feel completely fulfilled. And now we've been ideating on this business idea for the last 6.5 months, 7 months. Like, maybe I should just go all in on this. And something in India felt familiar. It was my first time there, but it was familiar. It felt like home. It felt, I don't know, just really familiar is like the way I would describe it. And while I was on that trip, I found myself calling my boss, quitting my job, calling my business partner, telling her I'm going all in like on the business. And I wouldn't recommend this to people. I wouldn't recommend how I did it because I think planning for that leap of faith would have been a smarter idea. But I just took the leap of faith kind of instinctually. And when I quit my job in India, I felt this huge sense of relief. And I felt this profound peace within my body again, kind of almost reinforcing that it was the right decision for me at that point. And then every time, you know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. There's so many challenges. I was kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop when I came back. I'm like, I'm so far away from my home environment that, like, of course, it feels good right now. I don't have to really worry about it until I get back to New York. But when I got back to New York, I actually was so excited. Like, I really just fully committed to this journey. And I think that's an important thing to do as an entrepreneur is to really fully commit to the vision that you have, to really make the time for it. But it doesn't come without its challenges. And a lot of it has been trying to build the capacity to hold the uncertainty, to hold the challenges that come your way. And every time that I've kind of felt really worried about money, for example, or not being super clear about the idea, or testing something, not failing at it, or having to redirect, something has always, like, in my times of worry, something has always come to reassure me that I'm on the right path. So in that way, again, it's kind of like I've built that trust muscle within myself over the years. And I've also been stretched and uncomfortable in the last year of this entrepreneurial journey. But what I really love about it is the fact that, like, through this professional development that I've gone on, because I don't have a business degree. My business partner does, which is awesome. But and I don't have business experience besides just what I've been doing for the last year. But it's really helped me grow as a person and really get to know where my fears are and how to walk through them. It's really helped me grow and become more of who I am through the entrepreneurial journey. So that's kind of like, it's just taken a lot of trust and a lot of faith in the vision and a lot of consistency and discipline as well.
Well, there seems like and we've got a lot of people who are entrepreneurs who listen to the show, a lot of high performers, people who are really out, going after life, getting after it, doing great things. But burnout's for everybody. Burnout isn't just for people who are not aligned with their purpose, but it's just everybody can experience burnout. Being tired, being overwhelmed, doing too much. What kind of things would you tell people that they need to do to really work on themselves to avoid burnout, to make sure that they're taking care of themselves? Because we're no good to anybody when we're burnt out. We're just no good. We're not performing at the level that we'd like to be performing at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that's the thing that, that's the basic conclusion that I came to as well, is we often hear, like, put your oxygen mask on first before you put it on someone else on the plane every time we get on a plane. Yeah, it's like such obvious advice, but we're not doing it in reality, you know? Oftentimes we don't do it. And And it's usually because there are voices in our heads that are like kind of dictating how we show up in the world. So for me, for example, like we all carry identities. We all carry identities within ourselves. Like I'm a woman. I identify as a woman. I identify as an Arab woman. I identify as a doctor. I identify as an educator. I identify as a surfer. You know, there's like a lot of identities I hold. And each one of those identities is giving me different instructions. So for example, as a doctor, it's like, yeah, we're high performing. We work hard under pressure. Feel free to cope was a line that I heard often. So that's like a voice in my head that's very prevalent, which made it difficult for me to ask for help when I was struggling. As a woman, I saw, or as an Arab woman more specifically, I saw what being a woman was modeled to me. Like I saw a lot of women in my family who were very nurturing and very self-sacrificing. So they would put the needs of everyone else above their own. As a doctor, I saw that too. We put the needs of the patient above our own. And it's just like you take this oath, like this promise that you're going to like make sure patient safety is your top priority. You're going to deliver excellent care and their patient safety is your top priority. But I think sometimes we misinterpret what that means. Of course, that's my top priority when I'm working with patients. But it's like, how can I do that from a place of like, I need to take care of me first, put my oxygen mask on first, so then I can actually be the best doctor I can be for that patient and make sure that their outcomes are as good as they can possibly be because I showed up in my best like capacity. So the thing I would say is, to your original question, the thing I would really say to people is start taking notice of the cues that your body's giving you. Oftentimes when we feel tired, feel stressed, it manifests in our bodies. You know, it manifests as like irritability, as low tolerance. It manifests as back pain. It manifests as neck pain. You know, it manifests as digestion issues. It manifests as tired all the time. So start really taking notice of how your body's reacting and notice if there's a change from where you were and where you are now, and then just get curious. That's something that I feel like I wasn't curious enough when I was in the depth of my burnout. But now I'm super hyper aware of that. And how can I take cues I listen to the cues from my body and then start asking questions like, oh, okay, I noticed that I have a shorter fuse today. Like, what's going on? And then I'll sit with myself and just go back to myself and reflect. I now have a lot of non-negotiable routines that are in place to safeguard me against burnout and to help me check in with myself a lot more. But it's just like, how do we reconnect with our sense of self so that we can actually really get to know ourselves and then notice that when there's something off. And then when there's something off, instead of being judgmental about it, how can we be curious and compassionate about it and start asking the right questions in order to just realign ourselves? You know, most of the time we know where we want to go. We know why we want to do it, but we just can sometimes get carried away with the work or even our passion, like you said. A lot of people have burnout, passion burnout, because they are so dedicated to whatever cause their purpose or whatever cause they're working on. And that can also lead to like self-sacrificing behavior, or we are so engrossed in a problem that we're trying to solve and we feel so passionate about it that we tend to work ourselves like to the ground. So it's just like, that would be my first advice, is just to really get curious and to take notice of any cues that your body's giving you, that there might be something a little bit misaligned, whether it's like you could be aligned on your purpose, but there's maybe I'm not doing it the right way, going about it the right way, and I need to just kind of figure out a way to achieve that purpose in a different way so that I can sustain myself through this process.
You know, sometimes we can aimlessly drift through our life, not really sure how to break the patterns and live the life that you've always dreamed of. I get it. I have been there, so caught up in chasing opportunities until I found myself in a life that felt foreign to me. It took me years to unwind the messy web to get back to what I've been put on this planet to do. And let me tell you this, purpose doesn't have to feel out of arm's reach. And I designed a plan for you to do a little bit each day over the next 30 days in a challenge that I call the Outlier 30. It's specifically designed to help you find or create more clarity around your purpose. So if you're feeling lost and you want to finally turn things around and live that life that you were destined to create, sign up right now. It's free. You have absolutely nothing to lose and the whole world to gain.
Visit gorodman.com/outlier30 today.
We always talk about leading with purpose and making sure that you're starting with purpose, but by no means, once you have purpose, is at the end. I mean, that's just the starting line of anything that you're doing. And then we always talk about mindset. We talk about getting your mindset right, getting your body right, and getting your money right so that you can really get those three things into gear and then start building that life by design. But if you're physically struggling, a lot of times that'll impact your mindset. Or if your mindset is struggling, like you said, it could have impacts on your physical being. And I really like the idea, like you were talking about the non-negotiables, because a lot of people don't put those boundaries into place. They are so hell-bent on getting to a finish line or moving quicker or doing a set of tasks at a more rapid pace that they forget to take care of themselves or get those non-negotiables, whether that be, like for you, it sounds like you might be a surfer, to go out and get some surf in. Or, for me, it's getting into my physical routine, making sure that I'm working out every day. But if those become negotiable instead of non-negotiables, I think that can impact your mindset and your body both.
I 100% agree. And that's a lot of the work we do with Embers is with our one-on-one coaching program. It's all about building the foundation for wellness first before we start kind of uncovering why are we burning out. Because there's a lot of conscious things that we are aware of. Like we can be aware that we are burnt out because we're overworking, or we're burnt out because I'm not sleeping enough, and we're burnt out because one of the common reasons we hear from clients, and the research also shows this, is my boss is like, I have a bad boss, and there's a toxic work environment. That's a very common thing we hear. And so those are like conscious things that we can be aware of, but there's a lot of subconscious beliefs, like the mindset thing that you're talking about, where we are really unaware of. And that's where 95% of our decisions are actually coming from our subconscious beliefs. Like the way we show up in the world, 95% of it is basically like the identities, the loyalties, and the hungers that we have that develop throughout our lives that get us to a point where we like kind of show up in the world in a certain way. And until we become aware of those things, we can't do anything about them to renegotiate them. And most of the time, like 90 to 95% of the things we learned and the beliefs that we have, they've served us in a very good way to give us a lot of success in our lives. But there's like 5 to 10% of things that no longer serve us, or that we need to renegotiate. And so that's the second part of the work that we do with clients is after we've kind of established a strong foundation for wellness, we start to uncover what are some of the subconscious beliefs that reinforce your burnout. So for me, for example, it was this hunger for belonging. I wanted to belong. Like I felt like I was one of the cool things about being a doctor is that you're part of this community that is like, knows the struggle in a way, and like knows the rewards as well. So from medical school through residency, and even just personally, my dad was a doctor. I felt this sense of belonging to the healthcare community. There's a lot of things that happened at work that I couldn't explain to people who didn't do the profession because they didn't understand just how difficult it was, or just how, like, the nuances of this particular job. It just like as a banker, for example, might say to me something about their stress and I might not understand it in the way that another banker would, or just any other profession. So And there was just this extreme hunger of wanting to belong to this community because it brought like a sense of belonging and safety in some ways that I didn't want to give up. But that reinforced my burnout because everyone else around me was like stressed. So then I'm like, okay, if I'm stressed and everyone's stressed, then I just belong to this group of people. And if I'm not burnt out enough, then maybe I'm not working hard enough, just like everyone else who's stressed. So that's one thing that kind of reinforced, that's one of the identities or hungers that I had that reinforced my burnout in that situation. And it was something I had to renegotiate. Like, is there an example of a doctor I know that actually has a good work-life balance or does their best to work within the constraints of the schedule that to actually maintain their well-being and do their job well? And actually there were, but I couldn't see it. It wasn't the norm. It wasn't the obvious persona of a doctor. It was just the kind of the outlier like you're describing. So it's just like trying to identify, like, how do we build the vessel that's going to carry us in a strong way? And I'm a doctor. I care a lot about health. And stress has a lot of negative effects on health. Obviously, chronic stress does. In the short term, stress can be good for us because it helps us identify danger and keep us safe. And it can actually even motivate us to like work towards a goal. But in chronic stress and burnout can have a lot of detrimental effects on our health. And so it's a little bit ironic that we know this. Technically, we have all the information and the know-how, but we're not acting on it. And what's preventing us from acting on it? And then some of those subconscious beliefs start to make sense of why we reinforce the burnout, even though we consciously know how stress affects our health, how it affects our relationships, and all those things.
So then do you, as part of the process, do you go in and do you adjust? Do you kind of do a shift on how you look at, do you try to go into the subconscious and try to bring that to the forefront so you can identify those things that might be causing you those stresses? Or for an example, you talked earlier, you said, before you went out, you were talking to a lot of the doctors on staff were saying, you're going to just ruin your career by doing this. They're putting all these things into your mind and into your brain about what you should and should not be doing. That kind of goes against what you wanted to be doing or where you wanted to be going. So how do you take those kind of things that might be in the back of the subconscious part, really analyze them, bring them to the forefront so you can move on through them?
That's a great question. And it's a really hard thing to do on your own. I did a lot of that processing in grad school during my time at Harvard. I took these leadership classes, adaptive leadership, and that really destabilized me in a lot of ways because it made me question so much of what I know. And I think it helped me kind of start to see some of these patterns that I was reinforcing, or the voices that really had an effect on me that I had to, and I had loyalties to, that I had to renegotiate with. So, so your question was, how do you bring some of these subconscious things to the forefront, right?
Yeah, so you can be personally accountable for them and then make the changes that you want to make, right? Because when they're in your subconscious, they just live there. And, how do you get them from there and get them out?
Right. So that's a really great question. And so I've done that work on myself for years before I started the business. So I've had a lot of practice on myself at least, and I've seen the changes. And then my business partner has also done the same. I personally, one of my non-negotiables is meditation twice a day. And that for me has helped me kind of access more of my subconscious mind, or has allowed me to find the stillness within me to kind of start listening and asking some of the harder questions, and then facing some of the fears that do come up when they arise. With clients, all of our programs are customizable. So it's not like I encourage everyone to start meditating, because it works for me, but it's not going to work for absolutely everybody. So we just identify first, like what works for you to help you feel grounded. what makes you feel joy? What makes you feel like you can handle pressure? And those are things that we figure out through kind of just going back through our personal histories and figuring out, okay, we all have personal examples from our lives when we felt great and when we didn't feel so great. And so we're able to pull from, I felt great when I was running every day, or when I did my daily walks, or when I used to call my friend, or touch base with my family like once a week. And then we start reconnecting you with some of those things to build a foundation. And then the process of the subconscious, like bringing some of the subconscious beliefs out, usually comes out naturally, actually, through the second part of our program, where people usually come to us with a problem. Like they'll just say, I had for example, I had one client who said to me when she signed up for the program is, I'm due for a promotion at work, but I feel like I'm holding myself back because I have imposter syndrome, and I feel like I can't be, like, I'm not ready for this promotion. And I know I want to be ready, but I feel like I need more time. Like, I feel I've changed industries and I don't feel equipped enough to be a manager, for example. And so a lot of the work we ended up doing together was, okay, what are the identities or ideas that like make you feel that way? And it's just kind of like teasing it out and drawing it out through whatever problem that like is present with the client. So it might be something like, so for this person specifically, some of the things was like people pleasing. They were the oldest child in their family and had a lot of expectations that they had to meet. So there was a part of this client who really wanted to like come out of these structures that were like built for her and wanting to kind of break free from them, and like but at the same time she felt confined by them because of like the voices in her head from her parents or previous work experiences or colleagues and even her ancestry. You know, like some of the part of the world where she comes from, some of the expectations from her ancestors like dictate certain things about what decisions she can or can't make, or what permission she has to kind of break some of these glass ceiling things that are placed. So we just draw it out through the coaching process based on whatever problem arises, and then we really dig deeper to the root of the problem so that we can start, and we try and conserve a lot of it, actually, because I don't want to say that everything we learned is wrong and then we need to change our personality and get a personality transplant. That's not the goal. It's like, how do we just like conserve and be grateful and like give thanks for the wonderful things that we've learned from our ancestors, our family, our friends, our work experiences, and what things are holding us back in this moment, in this particular situation, that we need to like renegotiate. And it's usually just an internal renegotiation process. We don't need to go to our aunt or uncle or our mom or dad and say to them like, what you taught me was wrong and I'm gonna let this go. And you know, we don't need to do that, actually. Most of the time it's just an internal renegotiation. And then often the renegotiation does incur losses. So whether it's like disappointment or when we draw boundaries with people, like when we are not used to, when we haven't had that as a norm, people tend to be disappointed because they're like, they've lost something, they've lost access to you in some sort of way. And then you enforce a boundary and they're like, whoa, like what's going on here? You know? And so it, like, part of the process is like becoming okay with disappointing others in order to stay true to yourself and like the goals and the dreams that you have. And it's really hard. It's really hard. And often we have to carry others through the loss, even if we're the ones, especially if we're the ones enforcing like a new dynamic.
Yeah, and it seems like we go through life, and our whole lives growing up are about going to school and being told what to do, where to sit, what to wear, how to be. You've got parents saying, you should be this, you should be that. all out of good. Everybody's trying to do good and trying to help lift people up. But those are the kind of things that get instilled maybe in that subconscious, like you're talking about. And in the back of your head all the time, you're thinking about, well, my dad wanted me to be this. My grandfather said I should do that, or whatever it might be. And like you said, at times we put what other people have told us or what people think ahead of our own thoughts and our own needs and our own wants. But one of the other things that you said that was really interesting to me is you're talking about finding stillness is what I'm going to say here, because so many people, and right now more than ever, people can't sit still. People can, I'm guilty as everybody else out there too, because I try to load my day with I'm trying to get as much in as I can every single day, whether it be my work, whether it be social media, whether it be my family, whether it be, there's all these things that I want to get so much in a day, but I never take that 10 minutes to maybe meditate, or I don't take that time to go take that walk, something that's going to take my mind and make it still enough where I can receive new information, where I can receive new ideas, where I can receive a different way of doing things. And I think that's pretty prevalent right now in society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. And it's funny, like, I just started my entrepreneurial journey a year ago. And a lot of the things I learned about content creation, for example, is people are like, make your reels under 90 seconds. People will only like watch you for 5 seconds. Like, the attention span is so short, right? And people want to be entertained 100% of the time. But one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten was from my younger brother. Many years ago, actually, when I like kind of took time away from medicine and went to grad school, he said to me, he's like, allow yourself to be bored. He was like, I really want you to give yourself permission to be bored, because that's when you start to have creative ideas. And he said to me, like, because I'm guilty too. Like, I fill my days and I often like want to be productive. I want to achieve things. But his advice was probably the most helpful advice I've heard in a while, because when I allowed myself to be bored, I was in a job that was good. It was a great job. I learned a lot of skills, but it was a little too easy for me. I didn't feel that challenged in the work I did. And I did get bored because I just felt like, man, there's so much more I could be doing and I'm not doing it. And then it was awesome. It was the experience I needed in order for me to feel uncomfortable enough to make a change and to be bored enough to start getting creative ideas. And I think there's really like there is a silver lining of allowing ourselves to be bored and just to like sit alone. And like my brother said to me, he's like, close your door, lock it, like don't talk to anybody, put your phone in another room and just sit by yourself in a quiet room. And don't come out until you've come out with an idea, or just like sit for as long as, feel the discomfort, sit through it and see what comes up. And he's been an entrepreneur for many years. And it's true, like it was incredible to be given permission in some ways to do that. And then when I did that, that's when all these incredible ideas started coming to me and then following through on the ideas. Because if we just have ideas in stillness, we don't do anything about them. They just die in stillness too. So it's like, when do we know when to take action on those ideas? And then when you start taking like a small action here, a small action there, based on what your intuition is kind of telling you, I think there's so much magic in that. And there's like, I think a lot of people are scared of unpredictability or uncertainty. But I think in those spaces of uncertainty and unpredictability is where there's so much potential. Like there's so unlimited potential, really. And there's a lot of magic, and it's just like, how do we build the capacity within us to hold ourselves through that period of time where things are in transition, unpredictable, uncertain, but also magical in a lot of ways.
I'm guilty of this all the time. Sitting still is not easy for me. I mean, when I sit into a room and I'm asked to just sit quietly or sit still, almost impossible, because you get so agitated and you feel like you need to be doing, you need to feel like you're going and getting things done. And what do you think people can do to consciously just say, okay, I need to do this for myself? Is there anything that you can do to change your mindset a little bit so that you are consciously choosing to sit still and being okay with it?
Yeah, we can do this in two ways. I'm actually like kind of curious, like, why do you feel agitated when you sit still? Or like what makes it
Oh,
difficult for you to
I'm
sit
going to get a
still?
little therapy. I like this. All right, perfect. I always feel like I should be doing something to move my family forward, to move my business forward, to move my partners forward. I've always kind of grown up with that mindset of if you put me in a room with somebody, I'm going to outwork you. I'm gonna go in and I'm going to do everything that I can in that moment to be exceptional at what I'm doing, and I'm gonna work harder than anybody else in the room. And so when I sit still, I sit there and think I should be moving us forward right now.
That's super wonderful, because it's like you have a very strong in the leadership class that we teach, we call it a line of code. So a line of code is something that dictates like that behavior or that belief that I must be doing something at all times to move my family forward, my business forward, my partners forward. So is there, and where does that come from? Like, does that come from, sorry, I don't know if you want to do this.
No, that's right. That's right. I don't know where it comes from. I think it's a sense of, I kind of grew up with not much. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of things. We didn't, my dad was very successful in his own right in education, but educators didn't get paid that much. And then a lot of money went out, more money, than you'd like. So I think kind of growing up in life, I wanted to always make sure that I wasn't in that position so that we could be moving forward. So my family was very well taken care of. So the people around me were very well taken care of. Not that we were unhappy. We just, I just wanted to have, more for my family and the people that were in my life.
Yeah. And that's incredible. That's incredible. And that's, so that's basically like a strong belief that you hold within yourself about the sense of security, right? And wanting to create security because maybe you didn't grow up with, like feeling like you had enough and maybe like, I'm sorry, I'm like, we would do this in a lot more depth and integrity in the diagnostic process of all of this, but that can be quite common. I have a strong sense of insecurity given my ancestry. I'm Palestinian, for example, and my family are refugees. So even though I personally grew up secure, like financially, I still inherited that refugee mindset of like kind of what you're describing. And I can relate to what you're saying completely, because it's like, no matter how hard I work, I needed to work harder because there could never be enough money in the bank account just in case something like the rug gets pulled out from under you. Or like you can never prepare for the unpredictable circumstances that might one day make you insecure financially, or you might not have a roof over your head. So that's like a subconscious thing that I've inherited from my ancestry.
Yeah.
Even though it's not something that I didn't grow up as a refugee, I inherited that identity as a refugee. And similar to what you're describing, like my dad didn't come from a lot of money, but he created wealth through his work, and he was able to secure our family's future. But he had a really strong like belief that he could never be secure enough financially, and that like I witnessed that growing up because he was a refugee. So that kind of thing can really like affect the way we handle money, for example, and how hard we work. Like, because I also grew up watching my dad suppress some of his stress. Like, he didn't talk about it. He was a doctor too, but he didn't talk about it, but he died young. My dad died almost 10 years ago. And I can guarantee, like, now that I'm older and wiser and can have the benefit of retrospect, there were a lot of things about my dad's life that were very stressful, but he suppressed, like he didn't express it or manage it. Like, he just took on so much by himself, and I think it manifested in high blood pressure and in a heart attack eventually, and that's what like caused him like to die eventually. But it's just like the consequences of not healing or not addressing some of these deeper issues are really serious. And that's why I'm in the work that I'm in now, because I do believe that we can have the impact in the world and be driven by our purpose in the world without sacrificing our well-being. And yeah, I think.
And I think that's great, because I think there's so many people that, that do work so hard. And, I'm one of those people who works real hard, and I don't ever really feel stressed at times, but I always wonder often, okay, well, my back pain, so I get some back pain. Am I actually feeling the stress, but I'm not showing it externally? Or am I putting it in a place and it's showing up physically with me, say in my back, those kind of things. And it's hard sometimes to know if you're really stressed when you don't feel it sometimes on the inside, but your body might be telling you something totally different.
Right, exactly. And that's a very common for the stress to manifest physically in our bodies. And what I wanted to say to you earlier too is when you describe like when I'm in a room, I can't sit still, or I feel restless and I need to be doing something and I need to keep moving forward. One of the analogies that we use in our business model is athletes. So think about like high performing elite athletes. They're the top of their game. They're the best in their sport. They train really hard, but they also recover really hard, because that's an important piece of their performance, right? Like athletes don't train 24/7. They have to actually take recovery super seriously in order for them to be able to perform at their best and be at the top of their game. So that's the kind of analogy that we use in our work, is how do we get you to work really, really hard when you're actually working and like recover. And there's different kinds of recovery. There's like active recovery. So that might be like exercise, or there's active recovery. It could be playing with your kids, doing a hobby that you absolutely love. There's learning recovery. So learning is like learning a new skill. That is also a form of recovery. So it might be like learning how to play the guitar. Or it might be passive recovery. And that's when we're like on our couch watching a Netflix movie or reading a book. So those are all important part of the performance piece also. And like there has to be emphasis on those parts in equal measures, at least, to the performance piece. And I started training with this fitness coach recently. And the reason I went to her, she sold me on, I'm going to teach you how to work out less and eat more. So I'm like, tell me more. And so her philosophy is, when you're at the gym for that 45 minutes to 1 hour, I want you to give it your all. I want you to focus all your energy on tiring yourself out, and really every rep should count. Make every rep count. And so when I'm at the gym, I'm giving it my all. But then I'm like, after that hour's over, I'm more than relaxed, and I only have to do that 4 times a week. And then I get to eat more food, in order to help build the muscle, or in order to allow for the recovery process also to happen. So it's the same with the kind of work that we're doing. It's like, how do we get you to really show up for work and be present and do work smarter while you're at work, so you can not fall behind and keep moving forward, and then give you the opportunity to go home and spend time with your family and have fun with your kids, and et cetera, like go enjoy your hobbies, and make that a part of like the recovery process. That's going to keep driving your performance and moving you forward.
It's funny, a lot of my businesses that I do, a lot of my entrepreneurship journey, my hobbies are my business, right? And so my wife is the same way. So we're both in Denver, Colorado, and we've got this flower farm. My wife's got a flower farm, but we live on the flower farm. So we live in her work. My office is at home. My studios are at home. So like there's not a really clear delineation between the two. So, and like she does flowers because she loves it as a hobby. That's her thing. That's what she loves doing. That's our happy space. So sometimes it's pretty hard to go, okay, you know what? I need to find a way to kind of delineate this at times to make sure that I am shutting down, because when I'm here, I could be in my studio doing something that's important to me, that's a hobby, but it's also somewhat work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And that's really amazing also to recognize, because, and it's wonderful that you have joy at work. Both you and your wife, you feel passionate about your work and you're happy doing it. And that feels like a hobby. That's incredible. At the same time, I wonder, like, my dad also loved being a doctor. My dad was an absolute, totally loved being a doctor. But when he retired, he really struggled, because the identity was kind of like he had to readjust himself and be like, I'm not going to work. Like he embodied that identity so much that it just became a part of who he was, rather than just a role he was fulfilling. Like his role as a doctor is to go treat patients and see patients and things like that. But it became so much of who he was that when he was no longer practicing as a doctor because he retired, it became a struggle for him to just readjust his identity to be like, I don't know who I am without this role. And so one small thing, and I can leave listeners with this too, and it might help you if you decide to try it out, is one of the most successful ways that CEOs of companies who don't burn out, or who don't really struggle with burnout, most of them have a shutdown routine, or a ritual that they do to delineate what you're describing, like their work day from their home life. And that might be just one example is they'll take their work phone, put it in a Ziploc bag, and then just put it away for the night. And so no work emails, no work calls once they step through the door of their home, and then they check it when they're at work the next day. So there's some sort of delineation through a ritual that signals to our brains that okay, work time is over. And this is especially important for people who work from home, because before it was easier to go into a physical office. You have your commute, your brain knows I'm going to work, I'm coming back from work. And now it's just there's that division of work and home life. But for many of us now who are working from home, how can you signal to your brain that my workday is over and now it's time for me to be separate from work and go into my home life?
Yeah, no, I could totally see it being a bigger and bigger problem. And, and then again, we're so inundated by life that it's hard just to slow down in general. So you're at home now, and then you can't slow down. And, I could see that really showing up. It'd be really interesting to see some studies to see if there are a higher percentage of ailments related to this phenomena of people working from home and not being able to let some of these things go. Could only imagine that, some of the stresses that I know that I feel and that a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with feel probably has got to be on the increase, if I'd be guessing correctly.
Yeah, there's definitely, we hear from a lot of remote workers about not being able to shut down and feeling the pressure of no boundaries between home and work, because they're working in the spaces that they live in, and it's easy to just kind of have your computer on at night and things like that. And yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see kind of the longer term effects post-pandemic in the next 5 to 10 years to see really what has been the consequence of not being able to separate.
Yeah. Well, this has been tremendous. I'm looking at the time, and I just can't believe we've had about an hour go by already, which is just blows me away, which is always meaning that there's good conversation and a lot of actionable steps, a lot of good things that people can take from this, really learn, integrate in their lives so that they can be better, so they can be healthier, live a more rounded life. And it's great stuff for entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs need it more than anybody right now, because they're just, they're relentless in their work ethic. Not that people that go into the work and go into their careers don't work relentlessly too, just like you were as a doctor. You worked a lot, but this is all great actionable steps for anybody who's feeling these stresses. So before we go, number one, I want to ask you, if people want to reach out to you and find you, learn more about what you're doing and what you have to offer, where would you like them to go to?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Hiba Khaled. You can just search me. I'm the co-founder of Embers. You can find me on Instagram at I am Hiba Khaled. And I've also started, our website is www.emberscc.com. And I also just recently launched a Substack blog called Feel It to Heal It. So you can find me on Substack. And yeah, I just started that earlier this month, and I'm really excited about it. And that's a little bit more personal, sharing some of my own personal experiences and kind of giving a roadmap to how I overcame my own struggles with stress and burnout.
And that's great that you can share that, because, a lot of people, we all have stresses. We all burn out at times. We all are not feeling great at times. But a lot of people hide it. They don't want to show it. So they don't want to let it out. And that's great that you're teaching through yours. I think that's a beautiful thing. But I have one more question for you, and we'll end the show this way. If you could go back and have dinner with your younger self, just sit down with yourself and give yourself one piece of advice, the most valuable piece of advice that you could give to yourself, what would that be?
Trust yourself. I think that would be the biggest piece of advice, is trust yourself. Like, really, when you have a gut feeling about something, try and be curious with it, be compassionate with it, try and understand yourself a little bit better. And most of the answers that you're seeking come from within. Often we look to people to give us guidance and answers. And we need that as children. Obviously, when we're trying to figure out life, we're looking to our parents to keep us safe and to guide us. But at some stage in our lives, especially as we're growing and learning more about life and having our own life experiences, I think there was a point in my life, and I can't pinpoint where I kind of lost trust in my own intuitive guidance. And so that would be my biggest advice, is trust yourself, and like, you are good enough. You do have the answers within you. And yeah, that would be my biggest piece of advice for my younger self.
Well, I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate you. For those of you listening, get out there and take a look at these websites and this information. So valuable. And take time to yourself. Be still. I know it's hard to do, but be still and see what you are telling yourself on the inside. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Rodman. Thank you.